Before we begin this tutorial, I would first like to note the required music that you will need. The etude is Gypsy Rondo, found on page 23 from The Mallets Student, Level 2 by Sandy Feldstein. I will show this on the screen so you can reference it during the lesson. Once again, please remember to subscribe and feel free to comment below, or if any questions you can email me at crisantidrum@gmail.com. Now onto the presentation. In this video, we'll be discussing the required etude for this year's upcoming Illinois ILMEA Mallet Etude for the Junior Band Division. In order to prepare something like this, you have to decide on what mallet instrument you're going to actually use. Today I have a xylophone and an orchestra bell set. Now, obviously if you're in school, you'd probably want to play it on the xylophone, or most of you pretty much have a bell set at home. Now, the piece will work on either instrument. The ranges work very well, okay? So you shouldn't have a problem with this, okay? So if I was going to play something on the bell, right, I will decide what kind of mallets we're going to use, because not always, mallets work on both instruments. So, and that's really important. You want to sound really good, the tone that you're using. So today I have the Musser's 103. It's kind of a hard plastic, and it really works well on both instruments, actually. On the bells, okay, or on a xylophone. Kind of has that cutting edge, and it cuts through all, pretty much, if you're doing a live performance as well, it works over the orchestra or band, okay? If you want something lighter, a little lighter sound, I kind of use my Adams. These are the Adams XB6, and they work very well too for both of the instruments, okay? And they also work on percussion things like, wood blocks, if you have to play something like that, okay? However, if I'm going to play on the xylophone and I feel that there's a lot of rolls, sometimes when you do a roll with a plastic, you could hear the attack. So I prefer medium yarn mallets. These happen to be, I believe, Mike Balter's medium yarn, and they kind of sound really good. And they work very well for if you have a lot of rolls in the instrument, okay? They just don't work really on the high registers, but in this piece, it's pretty much written for the mallet. It was arranged for the mallet instrument, so it kind of works. Either one of these, mallets will work for both, okay? Now, let's talk about what else there is to prepare for this. Most of you will receive a required mallet sheet, and it's called the Illinois ILMEA Junior Band Audition Scale Sheet, okay? So you'll see a bunch of scales that everybody's required to play. I'll happen to be working on the oboe one. There's two options, right? Oboe or flute that the mallets have to play. I prefer the oboe because the notes are written a little lower, whereas if you're dealing with the flute, they're way up on top and hard to read, although most of us do memorize. Okay, so on the left side, you're going to have your major scales. Now, we all should be working on major scales, and if you don't really know them, please ask your band director and or private teacher. They'll help you prepare for this. And the reason why we do scales, perhaps, is for technique to get around the instrument, as well as the theory, which we'll get into as we approach the piece that we're playing. I'll explain how the scales work. Now, again, on the left side, you have the major scales. They start with C, then they go to F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat. So it's C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat. Now, there is a reason for this, and I also like to teach it this way as well, is that if you find C and you go C to C, there's no flats in the music, correct? So no accidentals. It's really easy. Right? Pretty much you do it that way. You go right up the scale. Okay? Now, the next scale is F. Okay? F has one flat in the key signature. So if you look at the key signature, you'll see, again, if you go back and see for C major, there's no flats or sharps, right? So that's easy. If you see one flat in the music, you are in the key of F. Okay? So you play the F scale. It has one flat. Okay? The next scale that has two flats is B flat. Okay? So if you look down the third staff, you have a B flat scale. Okay, the fourth, next one down, E flat. And again, you keep adding flats. You memorize them, do what you have to do. But I think this order, C, F, B flat, E flat, really does help you memorize them. So really pay attention to that detail. Now, on the right side of the major scales, we have what we call relative minor. Now, what's a relative? Well, we all have relatives, right? The idea behind a relative is that it shares the same key signature as a major scale. So, for example, if you look at music and you should be checking the key signature, see how many flats or sharps are in, you'll see that C has none, but then you're going to realize, wow, it ends a lot in a different key, like a 9 to N here. Uh-oh. So you'll see an A, right? In fact, if you look at the scale, the next to C, you'll see an A. Now, what does that have to do? Well, C and A are relatives. So A is here, and if you play the same scale, starting on A, and you go right up with no flats, you realize it's the same scale as what? C. I'll play it a little lower. A. So C and A are related. So songs can either be in a major or a minor. Now, and it works for every scale. So for example, if you play the F scale, okay, go down 3 half steps. You'll find yourself at D. Play that same scale, include the B flat. And then you have your relative minor. Now, there are different forms of relative minors, and this is where it gets a little confusing, because if you look at the scale, how it's written, you'll see some alterations. For example, in the A minor, you'll see an F sharp and G sharp. And then going back down, they lower that. Well, what does that mean? Well, that's called a melodic minor. Now, melodic minor, what that does, it raises the 6th and 7th pitch or tone 1 half step, right? So what would that be if you're in the key of A, B, C, D, E? F would move to F sharp, and G will move to G sharp. So that scale sounds like this. Now, going back down, you lower it. Okay? So, that's what's called a melodic minor. Again, you raise up, 6 and 7 going up, you sharp it, and then going back down, you lower it to its natural form. So what I would do, first of all, it's probably better just to memorize what is the relative minor and then take those steps, maybe even circle them in the music, highlight them. So, because most of them are, what? Memorized, okay? Now, here's an example. Again, I'll play a little on the bells, how it's the first line is written. It wants you to go right into it. So again, after you memorize the major, relative, minor, natural form, raise the 6th and 7th, right? Then you're going to play it in that rhythm, go right into it. So for example, if you're at the key of C, raise, lower. Okay, that's again, all the scales are going to sound the same. So if you go back and play, say, F, okay? One flat. So what did I do? I kind of raised that B flat to B natural, C sharp, right? And then back down, you lower it and to its natural form. So that pretty much does it with the scales. The best thing to do is each day play a different one, memorize it. And again, I guarantee you this will give you a really great technique up and down the instrument, plus teach you a little bit about music in general, theory. All right, now on to the required etude Gypsy Rondo. You can find this from the book Mallet Student Level 2 by Sandy Feldstein. It's on page 23 and it's measures 1 through 18. I did number them, you'll see it on the screen. Okay, so a little bit about the composer, Joseph Haydn. He was born in 1732 and he was a classical composer. Yes, get that out fast. So classical composer, and he wrote in that kind of style. He was pretty much a famous composer because he was a friend of Mozart, which we all heard of, and he was a teacher of Beethoven. So the man pretty much was one of the most celebrated composers in Europe. Now, why should we know this? Well, he wrote in the classical style, and Gypsy Rondo, the word rondo, R-O-N-D-O, is a classical form, a style of music. So what that means is that there's an A section, right, followed by what we call episodes, which are B, and then usually returns to A. So what would that mean? Well, at the very beginning of the piece, he kind of does the A section, right? Okay, so that's pretty much the A section. The B section would be this. So that's pretty much how I memorize it, the A, B, and then it goes back to A with the repeat. So again, you'll see that there's an A, B, A section there, okay? So that's called the rondo form, therefore Gypsy Rondo. So before you actually practice the music as well, you want to obviously look it over and put numbers on each measure so that if you have any difficulty with some, you can kind of take note of that. Take note of, again, how many measures there are, and we'll talk about writing the stickings, which I did, what works for me. Dynamics, right? Circle the dynamics. I know it's a little more challenging on the bells, but they are written there. For beginning is very soft and it builds up at measure 5 and 6, and it crescendos, goes back and forth. So maybe circle the dynamics. Now, technique. You're going to play through this and realize, wow, I can't really play some measures. So why is that? Well, it's technical. So sometimes you have to work on measures that will require you to work on stickings. All right, very important. One notable change I saw was 5 and 6, right? They have that section where you go. So I decided to use a right there because it worked for me to get around really easily. So usually when you make a lot of mistakes in the music, one or two things, it has to be either you're sticking or you didn't, realize what key you're in or scale, which we'll talk about as well. So back to the technical issue, I always work pretty much with a metronome, and I set it at a tempo that I feel that I can handle at first. So I kind of work slowly. It says here that the tempo is what? Allegretto, okay? However, I'm not going to play it that fast because I'll make all kinds of mistakes. And so I'll take the tempo way down on the technical things. And I consider 5 and 6 and 7 technical. So right now, I put my metronome at 70, like 1, 2, 3. I really want to do. Little phrases like that. And maybe I'll take it a little 10 more. I'll go up to about 80. And again, I don't want to get too fast on it. I want to pretty much cover it tempo I can handle. Okay, maybe a little faster. That was at 80. I might decide, okay, let me go to 90, or here's 100. You notice how that sticking works really well. So right there, that I put it at 100, and it seemed to be working a little better. Technical issues resolved. Okay, there might be some other measures there. You kind of decide what you need to work on separate. Now, let's talk about what we discovered before, the key signature. When you first play this, you're going to see one sharp. So what key is it in? Quickly. Well, if you guess G, you are correct. So G has one sharp in the music. You start on G. There's your F sharp. Okay, so the A section is pretty much in G major. Be careful of that F sharp. Okay, then you look at measure 10, which is the B section, where you go, oh boy, there's some flats in there. So now you realize there's two flats. Let's see, two flats, major scale, B flat. Okay, then you're going to realize, well, B flat, but a lot of times you're going to hear it resolve to G. Right? So it's always going to go back to that G. So what does it have to do with B flat? Wait a minute. B flat? Ah, go down 3 half steps. So G minor, right, would probably be the key for that. So it shares the same key signature as B flat major. So therefore, you go back and you kind of play through that scale. So to recap again, you have G major at the beginning, and then you'll do a G minor, include the B flat, E flat. That's the minor, natural minor. I'm going to raise the 6 and 7, lower, and then you pretty much have all this, and I guarantee you'll start hearing this in music. So once you check the key signatures, you play through each section slowly with a metronome, you'll be really right on it. Okay, now, the form of the music, again, is ABA, and there's a DCL coda. What does that mean? I'm sorry, DCL fine. What does that mean? Well, a measure 18 DC means you go back to the very beginning, okay? And then you'll end at the second ending, okay, which is measure 9. So I'll play this at about a slower tempo on the bells. We'll go about, how about 80? We'll take about 80. Now, when I'm on the bells, I usually don't do the rolls because it seems like it's kind of clunky. I let them just ring out, okay? So that's really entirely up to you, but I felt that, you know, letting the bells ring out as opposed to rolling, you know, what is a roll? They sustain anyway. They sustain the notes, right? So in bells, I don't feel like you should have to do that. All right, so here I'm going to play very slow. Now, following the form. However, take note that when you do this for real, either live or sometimes if you have to submit a recording, they might have the first ending, you know, blocked out. So that means you go right to the second ending. And so the very A section you'll play one time. And then this episode you'll play the second ending and then go back and finish up at the fin A, right? So pretty much there might be a shortened version. But today I'm going to play it for practicing. I'm going to do the repeats so you can kind of hear it in full. So here we go on the bells at a tempo of 80. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's pretty slow, but it's safe, right? So you want to do it safe. What's interesting about this piece is that if you go online and research it, which I really recommend you do, you'll find other instruments playing, like a violin perhaps, or a piano even, and they play it super fast, you know, which is kind of fun to do. And you know, it's always fun to play fast as percussionists. We love to do that. But however, a lot of mistakes happen when you do that if you don't work on the sticking. So you're better off playing it in, you know, a tempo you're comfortable with, but try to get to that allegretto tempo, which is about 112 to 120. So they're very okay. Now I'm gonna finalize the tempo at about 120. This will be the final time I play it, and I'll take both endings to make sure that, you know, you have a lot of it to review. Thanks for watching today, and happy practicing.